September 17th, 5:30. First item on the agenda is to review and approve the minutes of our meeting on July 30th.
Move for approval.
Corrections? Okay, motion for approval. I will second that. Any questions, changes? If not, all in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We have folks here for a number of different items. I think we're just going to go in order for the time being. We'll take item number 2, review the protest letter in reference to invoicing for services for removal of storm debris. And we have homeowners here, I believe. Tom, do you want to address this first, or should we just hear from the homeowners?
We can start off. We had the storm of June 21st and 22nd. There was a lot of trees and debris and things that were over the sidewalk and onto the streets. Some were private trees, some were public trees. There was some trees over the sidewalk and streets at the residence of, is it 1303?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. 1303 2nd Street. I stopped, I guess they had cut some trees down on their property. There was a couple pine tree on their residence and another pine tree at the neighbors, and then there was a large branch from a ash tree that were on the homeowner's property. At that time, I don't think they knew that the city was not going to pick up public trees. I did drop off a notice and spoke with them after a few days after the storm. I don't know the exact date. Notified them that we were not going to be picking up public trees. We had discussion about whether they were their trees or not, and
Tom,
I recall that I said anything on that side of the sidewalk.
do you mean private trees, or we keep
Public trees.
that you're not picking up
Private trees, I'm sorry.
private trees?
Private trees, that we were not going to pick up private trees. And tried to explain that anything, inside the sidewalk was their responsibility. We talked a little bit about a tree on the side street, and I said that I would check into that. I stopped by a couple times and couldn't catch anyone home. So I guess that's where we're at. Time went on, and I guess it got to be a safety issue, and I think Chuck Perlock, our foreman, had some concerns as he seen people diverting. The pile of branches were actually partially into the street a ways into the gutter line, and then partially blocking the sidewalk. So I guess there was some concern that people were actually avoiding the pile of trees and things on the sidewalk and going out into the street. 4th of July holiday was coming up. Chuck Perlock contacted Marty Jensen, and they felt that it was just a safety concern at that point, and I can certainly hand it over to them at that point. I guess there was a letter sent from the compliance officer that it had to be removed before 4th of July parade, I believe. And I guess the property owners are saying that they did not have enough time to get the debris cleaned up after they received notice. So I guess that's kind of where we're at.
Okay. Both want to come up, or one of you want to come up to the podium, please? Just state your name and address and get that on the record.
My name is Jordan Nelson. My address is 1303 2nd Street, and that's here in Hudson. And I'll just go ahead and start by backing up a little bit. So you did visit our home on June 27th, in which you handed us the flyer, and I believe everyone has copies that are scanned of the flyer. And the flyer outlines that there is a city-provided debris drop-off site open until July 14th. And at that time, we mentioned that we believe the majority of the debris on our street was actually from that side tree, which we had recently done some additional work to our property. And at that time, the city had indicated that that was their tree. And so that was our understanding. So we were just seeking some clarification around that. And we didn't hear back. And so we didn't receive anything in writing or through any other contact about where the issue with the tree debris stood. Our next contact came from the city on July 3rd. When I returned home, I found the same note that you, sir, had delivered on June 27th with a handwritten note at the top that says, "Please remove branches by 4th of July, if possible, thanks." And so that was rather alarming, upon which I walked inside and immediately got on the phone and spoke to someone about my concerns, saying that I hadn't heard back yet from the city as to the ownership of the tree, and I was also concerned with a deadline on a national holiday, and that they had delivered this notice on July 3rd and asking it to be done by July 4th. The individual I spoke with said likely no one would be able to get back to me until the 10th of July, and she wanted to be sure to give us time to utilize the drop-off site available by the city until July 14th. She also did not mention any impending deadline with individuals on 2nd Street having to comply with a different deadline for tree removal. At approximately 6:30 p.m. on July 3rd, a police officer knocked on our door and delivered the typed request addressed to Mr. Lusk, my husband. And I think you all have copies of that. Again, noting that because of the upcoming parade and festival, that they would like us to remove the brush pile from the recent storm by July 4th. Again, a national holiday, and again, this notice is coming to us at 6:30 p.m. the night before. So then the city does come and remove the debris. And then, to our surprise, we receive an invoice. And that invoice is also included in your documentation. From that invoice, we have nuisance charges for storm debris, noting that it took 3 full-time workers, 7 hours total, 1 backhoe for 3 hours, 1 truck for 3 hours, and another truck for 1 hour. I think the reason for our protest is just noting the impossibility of this request by the city. And also, when they arrived on July 3rd and provided the documentation saying, because of the parade, we would like you to remove this, there were no consequences outlined. There was nothing ever discussed about an invoice. As I noted in my letter of protest, I stated that there were many possibilities and engagements with Public Works Department, and there was never any notification of any potential consequences for not complying with the request. And by request, I mean the handwritten note, "Please remove this if possible, thanks." So that left us with extreme confusion as to why we were receiving an invoice. And that is what has led up to the events bringing us here today.
Okay.
Actually, could I ask something? I'm John Lusk, I'm Jordan's wife, Jordan's husband. But when it comes to the brush that was supposedly on the sidewalk and the road, there was none. Because when we piled it up, we made sure the sidewalk was totally clear and there was nothing in the road. And I'm saying that right now because it was like that every time we went out there. If there was something moved, we cleaned it up. So there was nothing on the sidewalk or the road.
We also understood that this was a trying time for Hudson. It's our understanding that Hudson hasn't experienced a storm like this before, and that they were under stress and that their resources were taxed. And that's why we're understanding with the slow response as to the ownership of the trees, and also with the indication of next steps and what to do moving forward. But that being said, we were doing as we thought directed. And so then to receive this late notification that obviously with the invoice would be impossible for homeowners to comply with, especially on the eve of a holiday, I'm curious as to how how they thought we were going to handle that.
Okay, so a couple questions. So it seems like you knew some of the trees were yours.
The trees that were ours were removed then by a person, like, it wasn't a city person, it was someone who came around collecting wood.
Got it.
Because my husband and the neighbor had chopped up those pieces. So that's what we were saying. When you visited our home on the 27th, we were saying how, no, the majority of these belong to that large ash tree.
That was in the boulevard.
And another large part that was in our boulevard was the tree, our neighbor's tree that was crossing the road.
And they were
the big
told to bring
backhoe
that.
Pushed it right into our boulevard.
And they were told to put that there.
So I guess what I'm hearing is you feel like what was in the boulevard were city trees.
No, we're not, because then we're hearing, because then, as I wrote in the letter, that there was a voicemail that came on the 5th of July saying, actually, that isn't the city's property, that isn't, that tree, the main tree in question, isn't the city's property. The city said, that's actually your property. My main issue is nowhere is there an indication of a potential invoice or the consequences for not complying with this, or a deadline or a notification that because you're on a parade route, it would be different for you.
Sure.
You know, that's the part that
So you're
is
saying-
at issue.
So if you had heard on the 27th, hey, we need this removed by July 3rd because of the parade.
We would have had a whole weekend that we would have been able
Yeah.
to do work on.
Yeah, and saying like, you know, we're asking you to do this regardless if this is your tree, the city's tree, but they hadn't even responded. So at that time, think of, we're in the dark as to whether, whose ownership this is. We're acting as though we're not sure yet. We're not receiving information saying, there could be a deadline coming up. Do you live on 2nd Street? You're going to have to get this cleaned up. And instead, the handwritten note on July 3rd in the afternoon, and then a police officer coming. And they also couldn't indicate what happens if we're not able to comply with this.
Right.
So whose tree is it, Tom?
The two trees there is actually 3 trees. There was a tree in front of their residence. Here's a picture, there's a flower pot on it now. That was the tree that was in their front yard.
And the wood from that tree was removed by those people that came around to collect that.
Then there was a neighbor's tree that the top of the pine tree has broken off. This is the branches that, these 2 trees, there's one more tree that was a big ash tree, a big branch that was off of that.
It wasn't a single branch. I have photos, so if that's
But anyways,
helpful.
it was another tree that was on the other, not on the city right away, it was on their private property.
It was actually
The neighbor's
overflowing into the
property.
street,
Just
and
let
then
him please
Excel
finish.
came to pick it up.
So this is the 3 trees that I seen them cutting up and putting on the boulevard. I mean, I had gone by several times. This is the 2 pine trees and then the other big branch that I actually seen them cut up, and Mr. Wiggins, your neighbor, cutting up and piling on the boulevard.
And there was only one pine tree. We only have one.
And then did you
That's Mr. Wiggins and our pine tree, nothing.
But
came
this
off
is
that.
where the branches from this tree ended up on your pile somehow.
I'm saying, but we
Yeah.
don't have, there was nothing with 2 pine trees. You keep saying 2
And
pine
then,
trees.
yeah,
There was a broken off pine tree.
correct.
This is on Mr. Wiggins' property, and then you guys were out cutting the trees with chainsaws, and he was bringing branches from his tree onto your pile. And then there was this pine tree.
That's not a pine tree.
Or
That's
whatever.
the confusion.
Okay, I'm sorry, whatever this tree was.
Okay,
And then there was another tree that had a big branch broken off of it.
okay. And it's more, that's the one I'm clarifying, that's more than a branch,
So
but we can.
that's
You look at it
what,
now, I have to
now
tell.
that's what I seen, and I did stop, and then I did take a photo of, this is what we talked about on the side street. I said, well, it, appears to me that this tree
I haven't seen that
is-
photo.
I'm sorry?
I haven't seen that photo.
This is just a photo. I went across the street from you guys and took a photo to the west. And if you look, you can kind of see where the sidewalk, the big tree that you guys are talking about is actually on this side of the sidewalk on your property. And I think I mentioned that day that I said, I don't really think this is a city tree at that time. But I said, I'll check. I did drive by a few times and no one was home.
Is that practice that we
Like I
just
said,
drive
like you
by?
said,
Or?
too, it was very hectic for us to be chasing down. We did drop off a notice and said that we felt that these trees were yours on the 27th.
Well, okay, so in person, no, you dropped off the notice, which you were doing to all of the neighbors, and that was the point where, I think it was the first time then that you had heard, we're like, wow, we didn't know
At
that.
that point, the council decided that the city was not going to pick up private trees.
Okay,
So then-
so regardless of that event, whether that's public trees, private trees or not, I guess more at heart of the issue is, where was the notification that we as homeowners only had until July 4th to clean that up?
I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Perlock and Marty Jensen. At that time, that's where the letter originated from. It was Mr. Jensen as a safety concern.
Tom, can I ask, do we have any other invoices that went out?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
And I think the biggest thing was the safety issue with the intersection and the upcoming parade. So.
But at that point, well, let me back up a little bit before Marty speaks. I think this would have been a judgment call on our part in saying we knew the parade was coming, we knew that it's a Highway 35, it's a safety issue. Why wouldn't we have just picked it up? Common
Precedent, I
sense.
guess, just setting a precedent, if we picked these people brush pile up, then someone across the street is going to say, hey, so we try to be consistent with the orders that we got from city council.
Yep.
That's why I asked the question, because this is the only one we're dealing with, by the sounds of it.
If there was any indication that these were our trees, we would have picked them up. We felt that these were clearly the residents' trees.
Well, I guess at my point would be that it's a safety, it's Highway 35, it's a main thoroughfare through town. There's the 4th of July, they don't have the capability to getting it. We should have just picked it up. Common sense would dictate we just pick it up. This whole precedent thing, we take case by case.
I understand.
Would have
You
been,
know what?
this is my opinion.
Sure.
And I would favor waiving this because there certainly was a lack of communication for the extenuating circumstances that arose through the storm taking place. It was about June 20th, 21st, I think both storms rolled through, right? So how much downtime is that between that and the 4th of July? I think there's a little negligence on both sides, whether them, us, or not, but I think this is a lesson to be learned on how we go forward with the next storm and our procedures.
And I think the biggest point of, confusion or miscommunication was the 4th of July, that there was a different deadline for those folks on Second Street, and that maybe we didn't communicate that in timely enough fashion. That's kind of what I'm hearing. Marty, did you have anything you want to add?
The only thing we wanted to add is that Chuck had come to me on July 3rd and said that this obviously was a safety issue with the trees being down on the sidewalks and people having to walk partially out into the street. And the concern is obviously with the Booster Day Parade coming up on the 6th, this being July 3rd, Public Works has only got one day, which would be the 5th, to get it done.
Right.
So he asked if we would send a letter. I instructed Dave Krupich, our code enforcement officer, to send them a letter. Now, I didn't tell him to word it in such a way as to saying, you need to get this done or else. Dave worded it as he did. When that didn't happen, Chuck proceeded to go ahead and clean it up because obviously it needed to be done because that is going to be part of our detour route right in that area.
And I just want to backtrack, when did council make that decision? Or public,
It must have been right after the storm.
Yeah,
So it was
pretty much right after.
our first meeting in July, it was July 1st probably.
Probably, yeah.
And so you guys turned around and said, okay, we need to have this cleaned up by this weekend. And so it's not that on the 27th of June, we knew it and we didn't tell you. It's council didn't decide until July 1st. So there's a piece there that was sort of, it was no one's fault. It was just a matter of, so the piece that was missing was, if you don't do this by July 3rd, there'll be a penalty. Okay. Chuck, did you want to add anything?
Sure. Just a little thing. I'm kind of going up and down and all around. It was a crazy couple of weeks. And as we were starting to go after the trees down that are the public, I should say the cities, we started to pick up and, take care of the main arteries, and then we go to secondaries and third. Well, this was on Highway 35. And it was kind of in a crucial spot on, I think it was Monday. I was driving north on Highway 35, and I actually had to stop because traffic was coming over in my lane because there was 2 adults and 2 kids going on the road to get around this pile. The sidewalk was partially blocked. It was not cleared off. In fact, when I got there, it was more or less, I would say, half and half. That was one occasion. The second occasion was on July 2nd, and I think it was adult male and a young girl, and they actually walked on their lawn to go around the thing. So I thought, well, okay, fine, that'll work. But then as we got closer and closer to kind of the parade day, the traffic was actually swerving going over the double yellow line. So that's when I thought, well, there's something going to happen. So,
Okay.
and I did go up to the house and knock on the door to see if somebody if I could talk to somebody Friday morning before I even started. That was I think it was like 8:16 in the morning. And me and the fellow worker, we knocked and we waited for a while and nobody come to the door. So I had to clean it up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, it was a safety issue. Normally, I don't go on private, property, but this was, that's the main road where the traffic is detoured, and there right away was a problem. So it was kind of crucial. We had to get out of there.
Okay,
That's why I did it. So
sounds good. Two quick questions. When did you guys have the other wood hauled away? And I don't want to split hairs here, but I mean, just a little information. When did you have the other?
It was a volunteer that came, I think he was using it to resell. So
Okay.
I don't recall the date of when because it was like 2 families that came with
Okay.
like a large truck and trailer on 2 different.
They're picking up other people's.
They went around to several.
And so why wasn't this picked up at the same time?
He wasn't interested in the ash tree.
Okay,
He was picking it up for bad, like,
sure,
he wasn't doing it for debris removal.
Sure.
He was doing it.
okay. Did you guys have to pay to have them
No.
take it, or, okay. And so, okay, but you recognize now the trees were on your property?
Yes, but
And that they're
even
used.
so, even if I had known that from the start, I would still be taking the same stand today in that we were never notified that we would have a different deadline for the removal than other residents.
Okay.
We essentially should have had 10 extra days.
And you were planning to,
Remove it ourselves, but I'm not sure how, like I said, when you line it up with the invoice, how we as a family would be able to, on the eve of a holiday weekend, take the time to do the work of 3 individuals with 3 trucks.
okay. Kurt, your thoughts here?
Well, I don't think that July 14th was a deadline to clean trees up. I think that was how late in the month the dump was going to be open. That wasn't a stated deadline. And I just go back to the fact that this is the only invoice issue that we have, which tells me others figured out a way to do it, to get it done. So that's the part I'm having a hard time with. And maybe the others weren't safety issues. I don't know. Maybe there was piles there longer. They just weren't safety issues. So.
I just overheard someone say there are still piles out on people's property, and there are.
But are they on boulevards?
Is that, does the city have a policy where it's different, where there is more of an emergency in which to remove that? And if so, I'm not aware of it.
Did you guys get any bids on what it would cost to have, did you have a plan to get it removed, or?
Oh, we were going to do it.
You were going to do it
Yeah.
yourselves, okay. Okay. So,
I'll make a motion, we waive the invoice for this dated 8/7/2013, invoice 3440. And I think that after we do this, we need to look at storm policy procedure on cleanup. I wasn't in the beginning comfortable about the position we took as far as storm cleanup, when most communities around us actually picked up their own. So I think they made the effort. I think there's some common sense here that needs to be applied and do with the safety and the issues at hand. I would, that's my motion to waive.
Is there a second?
I will second it based on not having policies in place.
So, I would just remind everyone, we did have a policy in place. And Randy, I understand you didn't agree with it, but we had a policy of removing public trees but not private trees. The only reason I would be in favor of waiving the fee is because we had a pretty tight window. I'll just say I want to defend the city staff because they did exactly what we asked them to do at council July 1st. And you guys had more than a full plate. And they were asked to make sure that the boulevard was cleared by July 3rd. That was probably not a realistic request that late in the game because we made it July 1st. So you guys didn't have a lot of time to give warning. We probably were not as clear as we should have been in terms of here's what will happen if there is, if the debris is not removed. So I see everyone's position, and we as a council had a policy in place.
It was new to us.
We tried our best. It was a little loose. We were flying by the seat of our pants. Everyone was doing their very best. So I don't fault any of the staff.
Nor do I.
I'd just like to add, on top of that, because I think the staff did a great job under the conditions. Seeing the correspondence that is in here, there was no deadlines given or repercussions from it. So I think I would...
Well, the deadline came from the holiday and the parade.
Right. But it didn't say, or we will do it and invoice you for it. So
Hence our learning experience for us to sharpen our pencils on our policy, storm debris cleanup.
Right.
Okay. So there's a motion on the table and a second to waive the charges. Appreciate everyone's input and effort in the storm cleanup. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 3, can we go in order at this point?
Does have to go to council or anything? It just wait. That's Neil.
Neil, do we need to take this back to full council or finance? Or?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay. Thanks.
I can provide an explanation for that later.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to skip item number 3 just for now because we have folks here for 4 and 5. So let's move on to item number 4, review proposed downtown bench policy. Dick Whitcomb's here and Jim Ludiger and Denny. You're going to run us through what you've come up with.
Evening. I forwarded just a very simple draft of a bench policy for location of benches in the downtown, this B2 or B3 Central Business District, within the public right-of-ways. And essentially, one is the sidewalk width to place a bench would have to be at least 7 feet wide. The reason that is you need to have 5 feet of clearance for pedestrian access. And the bench typically is about 28 inches deep, so you're looking, you can't achieve that if the sidewalk's less than 7 feet wide. Area of at least 5 feet remains, of sidewalk area remains open for pedestrian access. Benches shall be located adjacent to the buildings to be placed parallel to the buildings. That retains the maximum amount of pedestrian access. If a location of a bench away from the building is requested, that location must be approved by the Public Works Department, and the department may set conditions of approval. Tom and I talked about a request being located about 2 foot back from the curb, but if we would allow our benches within that general location during the wintertime, that becomes problematic for us. So if we wanted to approve those locations, And perhaps a condition of approval would be as asked to be removed during the winter months when we do snow removal in the downtown area. Benches shall not be more than 6 feet in length, and the basic purpose is that so it can be moved if necessary, and it's not so big it becomes cumbersome to move it. And then there's some question on design and materials of benches, and really probably the key block of downtown Hudson is that block Walnut Street, which is a street just outside going north for one block, and that any benches proposed within the right-of-way would require design and materials to be approved by the City of Hudson. Now, please understand there's areas within the downtown Hudson where the buildings are set back off the right-of-way, so there might be 1, 2, 3 feet between the right-of-way and the building. I guess the question is, do we want to regulate those or not? I guess my feeling is that's private property. If they want to put a bench out there, retain it on the private property, that's their, that's their business.
Okay.
So I guess the question. One is, should an application be required to be submitted to the Public Works Department? And perhaps also, if you have another section on here, it'd be as the benches need to be maintained and clean, good finish on them so they have a nice appearance. And perhaps if there was going to be a recommendation forwarded to the Common Council, that perhaps the city attorney look at any liability issues for the city.
Okay.
I think Mr. Udiger and Mr. Whitcomb are here tonight. Essentially, the Rotary request participate in location of benches downtown generated this discussion. So,
a couple quick questions for you, Dan.
Absolutely.
In item D, potential condition for removal during winter months. Who would remove them? Where would they be stored?
Well, I mean,
the bench?
Well, the thing is. Something that could be considered if you're going to allow benches away from the buildings, perhaps in the area between Walnut Street and 2nd Street, or Walnut Street and Locust Street on one or both sides of, way back when the streetscape plan was originally done, there were a couple sets of benches proposed on the east side of 2nd Street. Maybe the city wants to, really take a serious look at placing benches themselves, taking responsibility for them, so they take them out during the wintertime. We make sure they're taken out and so forth, but they're still available to the public in an area that's pretty heavily accessed for pedestrians.
So you're proposing the city would be responsible for maintenance and removal and
well, I mean, that could be written, those conditions could be written into an application approval. If it's the city's bench and the city would remove it, if it's a private bench, but there again, if it's not anchored down to the sidewalk, which most of them, I would think only the city benches would be anchored. The rest of them, or if they're closer up to the curb, would be anchored down. Otherwise, they probably, we probably wouldn't require them to be anchored.
Okay.
So, and then the owner could remove them and store them out themselves during the wintertime.
So we're really talking about two different types of benches. Benches that businesses may themselves put out, right?
Correct.
And benches that groups like Rotary might donate to the city or that the city might install. This policy would apply to both types, but they're different.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Do we need to specify that in there?
Well, we certainly can clean this up. I mean, part of the thing is the Rotary wanted to get benches. I don't know if they're still looking to try to get benches this fall or whether they're waiting until next spring the work goes out. But if we have more time, we certainly can clean this up a little bit. I wanted to bring something straw man to you tonight to get some reaction, and if there's issues we want further addressed, I'm certainly pleased to do that.
I think we should just stick with one type of bench to keep it as easy as possible. If we have it required that it's bolted down, that it's moved, it should be in this so people know black and white that That's what we require.
You mean whether it's group donated or business owned?
Doesn't matter,
I agree.
private or public. It should be, this is how it is, in or out, so it doesn't impede.
So we don't have a hodgepodge.
Right, and so we don't impede the staff from working during the winter times.
What, yeah, I mean, that's the direction you want to give us.
Okay. Do either of you guys want to speak up? Thoughts that you might have about the policy or Rotary's plans, or whether you're ready to give up
I
on
guess
us?
we haven't seen anything except what Denny just said. If it's a 6-foot bench and we and the business owners would donate that to the city, and our original discussions with Tom is that the city would install them and then maintain them afterwards. And that was on the public property, not the business owner's property that may be set back farther. And so whether they're parallel right up next to the building or along the curb, and we very much understand being along the curb. And when you say that, Denny, I don't know if you're taking into consideration the 5 feet has to be before the meters, or is it from the curb to the 5 feet?
You know, the width that has to remain open for sidewalk, pedestrian access, minimally has to be 5 feet. Now, if in the case you had a bench that ran parallel with the curb line, if it was set back 2 feet, so, and then it could be taken out during the wintertime, from the front of the bench towards the building,
Has to be 5 feet.
has to be 5 feet of clearance.
Okay, but if it's parallel next to the building, and then it has to be 5 feet before the curb or before
Whatever
before the
obstruction there might be. You might have an obstruction from a meter, you might have an obstruction from a light post,
Tree.
you might have an obstruction from a sign. So
is
from
that
whatever
possible?
Oh, absolutely, it's
Oh,
possible.
yes, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what the
Yeah,
measurements
no.
are
No, it's
downtown.
fine.
So.
I went out and physically measured all the
Okay.
sidewalks, and that's, so I mean, most of the sidewalks from Commercial Street up to Walnut Street are minimally 7 feet wide. So, I mean, there may be areas, certainly, and that's probably the reason an application would be necessary, so we could go out and make sure that these physical characteristics could be met.
Right.
And we have the clearance of 5 feet.
That's what we talked to you
Correct.
guys about earlier this year.
Right.
And we had 5 different businesses that were willing to partner with us to donate to the city those benches, because they thought that would be a nice perk for shoppers, people that frequent downtown. And during this summer, as we saw all the traffic downtown, there's a lot of people downtown, and that's good for us. And I think that the availability of seating would be very, very good for the downtown area. And some of the businesses think so too, because they want to put some money in it. So,
Right.
Jim, you got anything else that?
No, other than, with the manufacturing time for the benches, we're kind of running into a deadline anyway, so.
Yeah, we wouldn't be looking at doing it this year.
Okay.
We'd have to wait till next spring.
Okay.
But we'd like to, if the policy is such that we're able to do that, and the businesses are still interested in partnering with us, that just allows us to put more benches in quicker than if we just did it one at a time, because
Sure.
our club has committed to doing $1,500 a year, which we basically 2 benches for 5 years. So we've missed year 1 already.
Well, Dick, I think everybody here, or everybody wants to see the project go through. We just want to make sure that it's done right, so it looks
yeah.
good. So we're I'm not speaking for anybody, but to do this, do it right, and so it doesn't look like a hodgepodge of stuff downtown. But I certainly agree with you guys trying to move forward with it. But we'll do it right.
So Danny, the direction you need from us is, do we think an application makes sense?
Yeah, what I'm hearing is that these donated benches would they'd become part of the city would be responsible for them, They're donated to the city. It'd be on the public right-of-ways. So our policy is that these benches, to be located, to meet this program, have to meet this criteria that we're establishing.
Put in an application each year then to do
Well,
whatever benches we
would, to the point that we know where the specific location is and,
well, similar to what we gave you this spring.
correct, yeah.
So Danny, are you saying then we would rule out benches right up against the buildings?
Well, if they're on the right-of-way, then we got to allow the businesses to put benches adjacent to the buildings, meeting all this criteria, or do they have to donate those benches to the city to be on the right-of-way?
I guess personally, and I'd like to see them all in one, I'd like to see them all either on the right-of-way and kind of uniformly installed. I'd prefer that to a mixture, where you have some that are up against the building, some that are out at the curb, some that get removed, some that stay. I mean, I think
Well,
it would be better to have a uniform.
I think Denny had kind of alluded, and correct me if I'm wrong, of your intentions were that if they have the room on their own private property, maybe we won't or can't stop them from putting a bench there.
I mean, there's a number of benches along the east side of 2nd Street that's on the private property that have been there for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. They're on the private property. They're not on the right-of-way.
Well, those would be grandfathered. You're not looking at trying to clean all. Your later comment?
I think I have a pretty good idea what you're wanting. I mean, we're not going to resolve this tonight. When I go back, redraft it, bring it back to the next Public Works meeting, and then we can take a look at it. If nothing else, I want to get direction tonight, or what the issues were.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Good. You feel like you have,
Yeah.
I don't know that we've given you much direction, but
Well,
we're interested in.
I guess I'd like to add one thing, as long as you're going back, and obviously your opinions count, but if we're being the recipients of a donation and all of a sudden it becomes ours, I think we work with it so that they are not removed, because I don't think that's anything that you and your department want to be doing every fall and spring.
Sure.
Just my thought that we restrict them to be placed in an area that does not need to be removed.
Tom?
I understand. Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
I mean, you're the one in the department that has to do it. So if you're willing to do it, I guess let me know that now.
Be taking benches in and out. It'd be
Right.
nice if they were, once they're installed, they're there to stay.
Mhm.
Okay.
My concern is if, the Rotary comes and they want to donate some benches, I think that was what brought some of this discussion up, was that the Rotary bench is normally kind of a blue color with a Rotary bench on it. So then what happens in the parks is, we've got several Rotary benches in the parks. They're blue. And then we have the Girl Scouts come in and they're a green color, and then they say Girl Scouts on them. So are you going to have this policy going to state that there's a certain design and material that stays consistent, like Randy said, that it's not all different? The problem is that we're going to have other groups other than the Rotary come to Hudson, the city, and say that we would like a memory bench, or we would like to donate a bench, and we're going to have Girl Scouts and Rotary, and we're going to have the Lions Club. So I would just caution that whatever the city decides on a design, that they stay consistent with it. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of different, and we have a variety of them already.
And I am
private, maybe some are private, some not, but there's already a few different designs already. So that's going to be the hard part, I think.
No, I agree. And so, hopefully we could focus in on a design.
We can bring back, next meeting we can bring back several examples.
Some ideas for that.
I don't think you want to have just one. I think maybe you want to have 3 or 4 where you'd have a choice. But, to me, just one, I think downtown Hudson's vibrant enough. It's an eclectic mix of architecture, just having one standard. I think you can have 2 or 3 different types that complement the downtown area that you'd have choices of. I mean, that could be...
I prefer one, but I guess I'm boring. I just...
No, I mean, we can bring back
It's like we have the
several.
same style of trash can and light fixture and, just, I'd like there to be some uniformity, but we can see what full council thinks.
Yeah. Okay, we'll bring back examples next time.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you, Rotary, for your patience and sticking with us on this, and we promise we will bring it to conclusion.
I hope we have businesses still with us.
I trust you will. Okay, thanks, guys. Item number 5, update on Berkmos Park Water Improvement Project. Tim Caruso is here.
Hi, Tim Caruso with the Hudson Water Utility. This area has been a problem area only for the residents not having good quality water up there. Currently, we have 2 dead ends. I did give you a packet that has some maps in it of the current situation. And if you're looking on page 2, there are two supply lines coming from Cooley Road. Each one of those ends up in a dead end. And in the water utility, the last thing we want is the dead end. We want a continuous flow of water going past the resident's house so that, obviously we don't have sediment building up, which we currently have up in Cooley, up in the Berkmos area. And there's a couple of residents up there right now. We actually leave the water run through the winter, which is not something we really want to do. Have them shut it off in the spring. And, I've been to some of the residents' house, and they have some filters in just to, get rid of some of the rust. And that's really the predominant problem right now up there. So what we plan on doing is putting a 6-inch main from basically the site of the current Cooley Road connections and running that 6-inch main up from both the north and the south, and then running that across the roadway area, but not in the roadway. We're going to try to stay out of the roadway. We've got quite a large easement, which now we actually do have easements up there given to us to do this, which we didn't have before. And where it does cross the roadway, the plan is to directional bore to not disturb the roadway. If we were to disturb the roadway, obviously we're going to fix it, correct it, So, we have accepted proposals from engineering firm, and we did accept one proposal to move ahead last Tuesday at the commission meeting to move ahead on the plans and designs for specs for bidding purposes on construction. However, it's getting late in the year, so I don't know if that's going to happen this year yet. The actual construction, I'm anticipating it's probably going to be in the spring. We'll let bids out probably in January. With that, there is currently I think it was February, there's a section of Cooley Road that we have a main in, and if you drive past, you'll see there's a patch of asphalt right now. And it kind of worked out well to a certain degree, and that's actually where we're going to make one of our new connections with a valve, and that is planned shortly. You'll see a road sign there, men working or whatever, to be new curb and gutter put in there, and asphalt before the winter or whatever it need be, and a valve and a stub in there so that we can just attach that and move forward. But that's going to be done this fall yet so that the snow plows can get through it. We don't have any problem. The third page that you have, you'll see in the blue area, and that's the actual proposed design of the main. And you'll see there's actually will be 3 fire hydrants up there for added fire protection. Currently, there's only 1 on the southern end, and we certainly can't reach to all those houses, and there are some pretty valuable houses up there. So we want to supply adequate water and adequate fire protection, and that's the whole idea of moving forward on this. So if there's any questions.
Tim,
Excuse me, go ahead.
Tim, I had asked you to come to this meeting to go through this because I had received calls from my constituents up on the hill in regards to both the water, which you answered the questions in the water, and it sounds like you solved the problem. It's the road, though, that is also the problem, which is also a private road.
Correct.
But now they're issuing easements. Do they not want that road fixed? I mean, that's a safety, it's a hazard up there on both.
They had come to the actual planning commission years ago and asked that the city take that road over. And I also met with the neighbors late July, and they expressed concerns in the city wanting it to take it over. We would have to go to council on that for number one. I don't know if that road is wide enough in certain areas to make that happen for full curb and gutter, whatever width that has to be, 20 foot, 22 feet, I'm not sure. But I did explain to all the neighbors that were there that it's not free for that to happen. They would be assessed for all that. And they didn't seem like there was a real interest at that point. I expressed you probably could put the road in a lot cheaper yourself and keep it the way it is.
Them? As
Correct. And explain that to all of them.
And Denny,
they seemed to be all on the same page on that.
And Denny, the Plan Commission just decided it was not an issue, that we couldn't, by how it's designed up there, we could not accept it as a road?
Oh, excuse me.
That private road is not even close to being city standards. I mean, we would not ever accept that by the city of Hudson. Without them bringing it up to city standards, then we would potentially accept it. If they want to come in, dedicate right-of-way, request the city to build a road to city standards, and where the city would consider assessing the roadway improvements, that's a possibility. But that north side of that road going down that hill,
it's terrible.
It's terrible. And why the city would want to assume that is beyond me.
I'm not trying to assume it, I'm trying to fix it, so it's not terrible. But
well, then the private owners ought to invest some money in it.
Right. But there's an option here why you guys are doing your work would be an ideal time to address the roads issue.
Well,
but obviously it's a
other
private
consideration is you got private septic systems up there. At some point, there may be a request by those owners to install a public sanitary sewer system. And if you're going to design a new roadway and build it, the best time to put the sanitary in would be at the time that roadway improvement's made. Otherwise, we've got to get adequate easements to accommodate sanitary sewer in the future. So there's a number of issues involved in this Berkmos Park area.
Well, I'm not suggesting the city take it over, but my concern is the condition of the road, as you pointed out.
And that's like anybody else's private driveway. You got to assume some responsibility. There's 7 or 8 houses up there that could share the cost, and apparently that burden's been pretty much put on one party up to now. So.
Yeah.
Okay. So Tim, are you looking for anything from us?
No, I'm
okay,
not.
Just
I came here to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay.
And again, I did explain it to those neighbors that if the city even would consider taking that over, it's not free.
Right. Yeah. So
They
something
would-
they have to agree to.
Somebody's, just like everyone else, somebody's got to pay for that road, they got to pay for the curb and gutter.
Right.
And while you're doing it, you should put in sewer, because that would be the smart time. You're going to have to pay for that. So it didn't seem like there was a lot of excitement after I explained that, so.
Good, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to jump down to item number 8 if we could. Chief Jensen's here, just for an update on the Wistat gates on I-94. Marty, just want to share with us what, I know you sent an email to council members, but the general public has been inquiring as to what the gates are about.
Right, and the gates were put in obviously by the state to help us shut down the interstate, or shut down those access points to get onto the interstate. And an example I can give, it happens every winter, would be is if we have an accident, say on westbound I-94 bridge, and it blocks all 4 lanes and we have to shut the interstate down, typically before the gates would get in, it would take me probably 1 to 2 officers on Carmichael Road, 1 at the 14th Street on-ramp, and then 1 down on 2nd Street to shut down those on-ramps to 94, and those are not including the officers that are on the interstate as it is. With the current system, all we'll have to do is go up, enter a code, unlock the gates will come down and block traffic from entering the interstate, and then when the situation is done and we can reopen it, all we have to do is crank the gates back up, put them in a lock position, and we're ready to go. We've been in contact with Sergeant Erickson from the State Patrol. He's setting up a training course for a couple of my supervisors. It's really simple. It says it takes maybe 5-10 minutes to learn. There's a key code and how to bring them down. He will teach it to my supervisors, and then we'll pass it on to our patrol staff. So when the state or, say, the county requests that we shut down portions of I-94 for either direction, either eastbound or westbound, we'll be able to respond, shut them down, and then go back on our regular normal patrols without having to sit there and direct traffic at those entrance points.
So it's going to be, initiated by the county or by the state?
Or it can be.
Can be local?
It can be local as well. There have been situations where the state patrol's been so tied up with other traffic accidents where we've had to take the lead on it, and because of the blockage, we've had to shut down and declare to shut down the interstate. We normally will contact the state and say, hey, we got to shut it down. They'll give us basically their blessing, say go ahead, and then we will shut those gates down.
Okay. Questions from anyone?
Did you get any clarification on 35 today? I know you said that you were meeting with the
Well,
state
we met with I-94 crew, but that was talking about Carmichael Road and the interchange there for the next 2035. They were looking at that project. It wasn't anything to do with the update on what's going on now.
Well, I know we had talked last night just briefly about all the ramps are gated now.
Correct.
Except
for down
Except
at
one, yeah.
down on First Street. This is a different group pro DOT. They weren't the ones involved in it, so
Sure.
You know,
I
how
haven't
will
got an
people?
answer.
I'm sorry.
Go
How
ahead.
will people be notified? I go to the slip ramp. You know.
Well, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to, once we get the gates down, we'll have to put out a notice, probably on Facebook. We'll put it on our city webpage that the interstate is shut down. We'll try to see if we can notify the radio stations across to say, hey, the system's shut down.
But you know, and I don't mean to again get nitpicky, but there's going to be traffic on it, so it's not shut down. It's just that you
Correct.
don't want people entering at that point.
Correct.
How do we communicate to people? Hey, but you can go out. You can go to Eau Claire and get on the freeway.
Right.
No, you can go to exit 10, exit 4.
Well, I know that part of the project that's going on right now, I believe, is they're going to be putting sign markers up either at exit number 4 or at Carmichael on the bridge that state traffic accident in, use alternate routes and so forth. And I know they do have alternate 94 routes marked to go either to Prescott to cross the bridge or over to Stillwater. So I know they've been put in place.
So there's not going to be anything at 2 or at the slip ramp at 2 if 4 closes. It's not going to tell people where they can get on the freeway.
No, there will not be. Not that I'm aware of anyway.
Okay. I mean, that's kind of, people are going to get there and
Well,
they'll say, now what?
I guess the biggest question I have is
one open.
Exit 1.
Right.
You know, if you have people coming from Holton, now they're in downtown Hudson with nowhere to go.
Right. And that's the other problem is if, say, like the whole interstate is shut down because we have a blizzard, now you've got to shut down both entrance ramps there at exit number 1. How do people turn around? I don't think they've come up with the design for that yet either. So.
What do you mean both entrance ramps?
Well, because if you're going southbound on 35, you can either take the slip ramp to go westbound, or you go underneath the bridge and do the cloverleaf and go eastbound.
Yeah.
So, and there's a median that's in there up until Front Street, so there's quite a bit of distance in between there. So if we were to shut down westbound, we could do that, and eastbound could still go.
Right.
But if you shut down the whole thing, at what point do you have to put that barricade?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is going to be interesting. I mean, in the 20 years I've lived here, I don't know that I've ever seen.
Well, I would agree. I have
block the interstate or not allow people to get on.
We've done it several times. We've had major accidents. We had the bad accident on eastbound 94 here about, I want to say 7-8 years ago, where the nuns from Milwaukee ended up crossing the center line, hitting another vehicle head on. We had traffic backed up all over the place, and we had to shut down
Close the
eastbound.
ramps.
And we had to put people up on top of the ramps. We had to shut down The on-ramp at
It backs up
94.
cooler, it backs
Oh, yeah.
up everything.
It backs up everywhere. But the gates are a great idea, just so, from a personnel standpoint, so you don't have to put emergency vehicles or personnel up there to block them off.
They have flashing lights on them,
I believe they do, correct? Yeah.
so you wouldn't drive into them.
No, you wouldn't run into them, no.
They're a good idea, it's just people aren't going to know where to go.
Right. I was kind of hoping that there would be more information from DOT, but nothing else has come out on it.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions for Marty? I guess we'll see how it works.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we could go down to item number 6, and I think we'll just go in order.
You do 3.
3, thank you. Review change order for riprap for the mooring improvement project. Looks like additional riprap was needed.
The mooring project that was completed in June as part of the improvement for the dinghy storage, specification stated that the site must be restored to the original condition. The area along the dike road is not flat. It goes up and down, and as you see it in some of the photos in the issue sheet, that some of the sonotubes or the concrete were pretty high, and at that time, just where the location was, that it was very unstable. It was dangerous for people to walk around there. Plus, there was not a lot of stability for that sonotube, so we needed additional riprap to go around those sonotubes and just make it more stable and safe. So we're just asking for a change order to come out of the mooring fund. I think the change order was $2,200, and we're balance of the mooring fund is $9,000.
Okay.
Was there other bids for this job? More than just Zappa Brothers?
I don't think we got any.
Yeah, I thought Pember did.
Oh, I think Pember, yeah, I think Pember.
You know how far off, do you remember?
I don't know, I can't remember. Do you remember, Neil? Was it a couple thousand? I think it was probably a couple thousand.
I'm thinking it was in the range of $11,000.
Addition, higher?
No, I think.
7 and 11.
7,000 and change.
Yeah.
Pember was around 11,000.
Yeah, I think that's.
But you're saying for this additional...
I just have a problem with publicly bid jobs that go over, and then they want more money. That's the, I don't want to call it a game, but that's the game. So to bring it back to its original, I mean, the bidder needs to figure out what it's going to take and give their best number.
But like I said, the lay of the land was such that when we put the sonotubes level, that one was high, one was low, there was not enough gravel or soil around that area. Once we got the sonotubes in, it was very obvious that we needed some more riprap. So I understand what you're saying also, but.
So are you saying there was no way of knowing that? I mean, did we not tell them this is where they're going to be?
Well, we identified the locations, but it says the project specification stated that site must be restored to the original condition. Well, the original condition was that there was was going to be some voids and areas that the sonotube was going to be pretty exposed. After we got the chain on there, we noticed that it was moving back and forth, and short order that wasn't going to be very stable.
So you're saying there's no way they could have anticipated what was going to be involved?
Well, possibly, but the state said it was, the state said it's supposed to be restored to the original condition. If there was not enough rocks there, I guess that was a hindsight on my part. That the I thought the sonotube would hold it, but it didn't. It was not enough.
Well, you wouldn't know that until you got into the project, so it's not.
Well, even so, once we put that chain on there, we could, you could start. I could just see the sonotubes moving.
And the riprap holds the sonotube now?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's moving and the only thing that's holding the sonotube is riprap,
No, I mean, it was moving a little bit, maybe we could have went a little deeper, but that's the specifications we had, you know, if we wanted to
Right.
go, we felt that that was deep enough at that point, but
I mean, I don't doubt that riprap is heavy, but riprap moves. So if that riprap over the years moves down, are those sonotubes going to be moving around?
I guess they certainly could, but hopefully everything will be, you know, this will stabilize and hold it. There's not a lot of pressure on there, but we did see some movement and felt that it, you know, we should do something before it got any worse.
Okay.
So where was the additional brought in, just around sonotubes?
Yep.
I mean, 40 cubic yards is quite a bit.
There's 10 sonotubes, so we have five locations and we had 10 sonotubes.
Well, they did the service, they put it down there, we have to pay the bill.
That's not, I can tell you, if you do a state project and you go over, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but, I mean, I've been involved in quite a few. I mean, that's what the bidding process is all about.
Yeah, I get it, but
So at that point, I guess, like, I understand what you're saying, Kurt. So at that point, then, we seen that maybe we didn't have the specifications, we should have just rebid it out, or, you know, we should have said, okay, we either need a change order, number one. We seen that we had a problem, that there was an issue with the way the project ended up. And at that time, I don't think it was the contractor was trying to shortchange us or whatever. The project needed to be corrected.
It was a crunch.
I didn't feel that we should leave the project the way it was. And at that time, the dinghy people wanted to get their boats out on there, and
I mean,
I think we had to make a decision. I made a decision.
I guess based on the fact that it was our request to Gary for additional product, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
I appreciate your comments, though. I mean,
No, I understand what you're saying.
I've just seen it too often where that's how guys are low bidders,
Yeah,
and they make it up later.
yeah,
And I'm not accusing. I mean, that's,
yeah,
but it is something to just kind of be aware of.
absolutely, yeah.
but the fact that we said, you know, you were probably basically done and said, we need more, well, that justifies the,
So I'll make a motion that we approve the change order for the additional riprap for the amount of $2,200.
I'll second that.
If there's no other questions, comments, all in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 6, update on Vine Street between 4th and 5th Street.
You probably don't have that
Actually,
one.
this should be,
Probably
say,
in
Elm
this
Street.
file, I think, yes.
Should actually say Elm Street between 4th and 5th.
Okay.
I think this was an issue that was brought up at the last Public Works meeting,
yeah, I brought it up.
and we visited the site, took some photos, as you can see in the issue sheet. The issue is that when you come out of the alley, the apron is broken up pretty bad. The curb and gutter is in poor condition, and just the angle of the apron and the way the crown of the road is, that many of the vehicles bottom out and are getting damaged. And there's some concern with that. My recommendation would be to put a new curb and gutter in there, a new apron, try to construct it so we can lessen the angle so that the vehicles don't bottom out. I don't think we took a photo of the other side of the street. Actually was replaced last year when we did some
I do.
catch basin repair. And actually you can see where the apron and the gutter was replaced and the angle was lessened, so pitch was changed so it doesn't bottom out the vehicles as much.
This is on the Vine Street end, right?
No,
No.
Is that- which end is this?
Elm Street.
north.
Oh,
So this is between Vine and Elm?
So between 3rd and 4th on Elm.
4th and 5th?
I'm sorry.
Yes,
Yes, 4th and 5th Elm.
Fourth and Fifth on Elm.
Fourth and,
So that's the other side. This is me standing where we're talking about,
okay,
and that's the other side of the alley.
okay.
So if you were to go, that's the.
That's
that
the
part.
subject side?
See the clean part over there?
Yep. Thank you.
On the web? On the web. But not their web. Don't go there.
Okay, so we have $58,000 left in the curb and gutter replacement program. We're looking at an estimated cost of $4,000 to repair this.
Approximately. Actually, we're just completing the, Chuck is gone, but he's just completing the curb and,
No, he's there.
oh, there he is. He's just completing the sidewalk inventory, and we certainly could include that in the curb and gutter sidewalk program this year. And what we generally do is we put our numbers in and see what the bids come in back at, and then we can delete or subtract whatever, we'll have a priority, and we get the highest priorities first, and we go down and see how much money we have left in the fund, which is, did you say 58.7?
58.
So we certainly could include this in our list of projects to be done this year. And once we get the bids in, we can, we'll put them in order and see what we can do this year.
Sounds good. So I'll make a motion that we include this in the curb and gutter replacement program for this year.
Second.
There's no questions or comments? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item number 7, update on the Liberty Street and Summer Street road condition. You have an issue sheet?
This is basically another request from last meeting. This is on Liberty Street, where it intersects with Summer. Pretty much the same condition. The valley gutter is in poor condition, and it has a very curved slope to it. Summer Street has a curve, is the crown of the road is such where people that are coming southbound out of Liberty Street bottom out on that intersection. In order to correct that intersection, I measured, I think we need about 80 lineal feet of curb and gutter, 60 feet of valley gutter, and one water valve adjustment, and we need area of blacktop about 24 by 28 removed to change the angle of the curb and gutter to get that intersection so we don't have vehicles bottoming out on that also.
Any idea what we might get from assessments?
This is the intersection?
Well, but I mean, you're doing curb and gutter on,
This wouldn't be a set.
Well, would be in the intersection. Usually the city radiuses are all
okay.
within
Public.
generally in the public
Okay.
right of way, so there probably won't be any assessments on
Okay.
either one of these projects.
There's funds left over for this one then, too?
Well, this would mostly be curb and gutter also. I mean, if that's where you would like, it definitely could be considered.
here's what I want to make sure we're doing now, that we're not just cherry picking and that we're looking at what other needs we have. We have X number of dollars, but that we're truly picking the worst ones. And if this is one of the worst, we should consider it. The last one seems pretty severe. But I want to be careful that we're not sort of
Yep.
making decisions for you when you're looking at the city as a whole.
Yep, and certainly we can see once Chuck is done with his inventory, his list also, and then we can rate them on that list. I mean, I think the whole consideration of the sidewalk program is to have safe sidewalks, and we kind of lumped it sidewalk and curb and gutter program.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think sidewalks are probably the biggest safety issue. Certainly this is a concern, but I know we want to make sure the sidewalks are safe first. And we can certainly, rate this put it on the list, and if it fits within the program,
Yeah.
that's something that the council or Public Works Committee can review at that time once we get the inventory completed.
Okay. Any other comments?
Well, I do think this is a bad one, but I want to make sure, like you said, after we do the other stuff on the list, we come back to this.
And if it doesn't make it this year,
Next year.
next year it's on the list, so, okay.
So this included in the curb and gutter project this year, and we'll see where,
Include it in the consideration list
Yeah.
and see where it ranks.
At the bottom of the list? You
Well,
know.
just,
Well, right, where it ranks, exactly.
yeah, where it ranks, and if it meets the cut, great. If it doesn't, we'll look at it next
But I would
year.
encourage you to drive on that too.
Oh, I have.
Okay.
I've actually ridden my bike over it.
Yeah, you have a house over there.
Tom, is this a little bit more than what's been the curb and gutter program, though? I mean, you have some,
well, with the asphalt removal, it is a little bit more.
right, and
So I guess, could this be considered part of a street project? It's getting close.
yeah, it's on the
It's on the
edge.
cusp.
So now we're starting to change grades of the sidewalk a little bit, and that's,
Well, there's
yeah,
no
we just want to make
sidewalk.
sure that we get enough drainage and things like that, so.
My other concern too is your estimated cost of 15,000. The city policy now is anything over 15,000 has to go out for public bids, which,
Which we had bid it through the sidewalk program, I mean, because that'll be probably 50 or 60.
it would be, okay.
Do you feel that there's, need for any engineering or, I mean, I'm a little concerned with some of the grades here, a little bit. We might
Right.
need at least someone to take some,
Some shots and to make sure we can get some slope to make sure.
a little bit, yeah,
It drains.
it's a little more than just putting in, we have to change the grade of the road and,
But the problem I see happening is it's not a street to be mill and overlaid. It's a little, some poor draining 24 by 28 feet. So it's, a lot of the improvements we're doing now, the whole street's being mill and overlaid and we're fixing that intersection. And this doesn't fit in it. So
Doesn't
like you
quite
said,
fit there either.
it's in a gray area.
yeah.
Well, it shouldn't be let go. And I don't think you guys are suggesting that, but.
No, just.
We're just not quite sure
Where it goes.
what category we put it
It
in.
should just be added to the list. Remember the Redwood Drive, how that issue was on a list, and we finally got that one done. It's kind of similar to that. It's more of a street project, I think, too. I agree.
Well, we could include it on the street project next year then, if that's what you.
Tom, with this project, what is the largest concern? Drainage or condition of this area?
It was brought up, I guess, just because vehicles are bottoming out.
Okay.
So what's the committee's pleasure?
Well, I'll move that we put it on the bottom of the list, but what list? I mean, it needs to be addressed, I mean,
Well, the
regardless.
problem is, if we put it on a curb and gutter list, this is a little bit bigger asphalt.
Right, usually got
Generally, when we do curb and gutter, we remove a section of asphalt in front of it so we can get our forms and get compaction. Generally, that's 2 feet wide. Now we're talking of a pretty good patch, that's, well, the width of the road, 28 by 24, so it's a little, does that fit in the scope of the sidewalk program? It's the asphalt portion of this is a little more than generally what we see on the curb and gutter program, or the sidewalk program.
And there is no sidewalk in there, so I don't know how we can put it on the sidewalk. So can we look at it just as a road project?
I would say maybe include it in a road project for 2014.
Okay.
I mean, it seems like, to me, it makes more sense to have it in that project, and then we can include it and get some more, probably a little better specifications on it.
Okay. So,
So he had a motion. Randy,
Yeah,
okay,
motion.
motion to do that next year, 2014
road project.
road project.
I'll second that. If there's no questions or comments, all in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Neil, I know you're here for the budget, and
He's here for, are you just here for storm sewer budget, Neil? Or you-
for all of them.
Okay, because
Okay.
Devin just wants me to let him know when we want to talk
tell
about
him
it.
soon
Okay.
if he's available.
Okay.
I mean, we'll skip around till we can get to them, but I think some of these other items are pretty small. Update on the LED lighting.
We've made a little progress. A little bit. Finally, got a contact person in Eau Claire, and she's came up a couple different times, and we talked about the project and some of our concerns. We went out in the field twice, and what we did find out the last time was that on some of our billing, there's different rates for signal lights and street lights. So we did find a discrepancy in our billing, and so we actually have a pretty sizable refund from XL Energy, I think to the tune of $30-some thousand.
Right, it's a credit.
Was it 30? I didn't.
Right around 30, and most of it related to the downtown street lighting that had been paid for out of the room tax fund. So we have a little bit healthier balance in the room tax fund.
So that was a very good find. So that was a very pleasant email that I got, that we got a $30,000 credit. The other thing that we found was, or the other information that we came up with as far as street lights, the big thing is once we get our meter, we have several intersections and several sections of street lights that are not metered. So Christine is her name, calculated, I think we have about 80 or 90 lights, street lights that are not metered. So she took 3 different locations, 493 Stage Line Road, there's 38 street lights that are connected to that meter. 425 Stage Line Road, there's 33 lights that are connected to that meter. 2500 Hanley Road, there's 16 lights that are connected to that meter socket. So that totals 87 lights, which is pretty comparable to the 90 lights that we have unmetered. So she calculated the usage of those 87 lights. She calculated the $7 a month fee. Once we get the meter charge, there's a $7 a month meter charge for that.
Per light or per hook?
Per
month. Per meter. And then she calculated that out for the whole year, and she came up with this is just for the 87 non-metered lights, that our yearly savings for those would be $3,135 if we put meter sockets on those, if we get those 87 lights metered. So that'll be a $3,000 savings there, although we have to get the meter sockets installed on those locations.
Which is going to be like...
Well, I think we have some money set aside for that, in our capital projects, and I'm working on the specifications to get those 10 light meters or meter sockets installed. The thing that we have not calculated out yet is we have 8 signal lights that are non-metered, intersections that are non-metered. We haven't figured that out yet. We have had Jason Fredericks from Foth. We gave him the timing signals for 2 different intersections. And then I think someone else calculated, I have another calculation here. Both of them are comparable. When we took the traffic signal timings for Crestview Drive and Carmichael Road, our incandescent lights, we have the reds are 169 watt bulbs, the greens are 116, the red arrows are 169, Dolwoks are 69 watts, are calculated out at $275 a month. When you go to LED lights, most of them range from 8 to 6 watts, and they calculate that at $22 a month. So there's going to be a substantial savings there. Like I said, there's still a lot of, we need to make sure that our billing, and I want to sit down with Neil and XL Energy, and before we get too excited about the signal lights, because we still have some work to do on that. So I guess that was just my update, that we did get a large credit just by going through a lot of the billings and things like that. Just by getting the lights off the non-metered rate, we're going to save, a few $1,000s. And then when we tackle this, when we get this signal traffic calculated out, I think there's going to be savings there.
So that $3,000 savings,
just on the streetlights.
so that has nothing to do with the LED.
That's just moving being non-metered and metered.
I was going to say, I was hoping for a lot more than $3,000.
That'll be, once we get this, and they don't even like having this unmetered charge anymore. It's something they used to do back then, but now they want to have everything metered so they can have a better handle on it.
And so it sounds like there's going to be like a $6,000 cost to have those meters put on.
I think about $6,000, but then we found out that meter box up by Wendy's is all rusted, so we need a new electric box there for a control cabinet.
Okay.
So I'm working on the specs for that now, so sorry, it's just taking a little bit
No,
longer,
it's-
but I mean, we're moving, and I think it's in a positive way. So once we get the meter sockets in and get these off the unmetered charge, and then we can sit down and talk about the savings of LED lights. So this is a big thing, and it's kind of
This is an obvious first step, right?
Well, that's what we
have
need
to-
to clarify, is just get everything off, the
Because there's no
unmetered.
use doing LED if they're not going to change our non-metered rate.
No, so this is our first step.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Thanks for that. Devin, what would you like to do? We're at item number 10.
However you want.
No, he's just gonna do number 11.
Yeah, let's do number 11.
10 is postponed. Sorry.
Oh, 10 is postponed. Oh, got it. All right, so item number 11, review proposed 2014 Public Works budget.
I think, Tom, we provided to you when I sent out the packet, the spreadsheets. And Deb, did you get copies out to them tonight of the narrative?
Yeah, they have the
Okay.
spreadsheets, they just don't have the narratives, except unless, depends on what they're looking
Okay.
at. No, I think they have the narrative.
There weren't a lot of, that I could see anyway, a lot of major increases in operations. I mean, there were some things that, for example, road salt. We know we're going to need to increase that budget. I mean, that's...
Well, I'm just saying, we were over last year.
Right.
We had probably a normal winter, where the winter before, I mean, there's
It
like
fluctuates.
peaks and it fluctuates so much, so.
And last year, if you remember, you did put in two $20,000 contingencies, one for fuel, one for snow removal in general, whether it's salt or maintenance workers,
Wages.
whatever we needed that. So we haven't touched those yet. A lot of it's going to really depend on what happens between now and the end of the year. The road salt, we're right at budget, if not going to go
Well, and
over.
the other thing we do need, though, is our salt contract.
Right.
We have an early fill. It has to be, we have to have delivery before, I think it's November 15th, of 200 ton at $60 a ton.
You just did that one.
Right, I think we've already
already did-
adjusted for that,
Okay.
yeah.
That
that's
money's
taken
already
care
in.
So I don't know, Deb, since you have the narrative, are there I don't think there's any major increases in
Just
any of
in
the,
machinery and equipment, we're always,
for the repairs.
just the machinery and repair, it's, I guess it was approved 84.7 for 2013. We just asked for $7,000 more. We're just always running, just because of our age of our equipment and things like that we're running really tight on that line item. East Garage, we deducted $1,000 just from the uniform savings that when we went with the new uniform contractor. So we deducted $1,000 there. The West Garage, we had issues with our used fuel, motor oil burners, the furnaces last year, that we had some bad fuel, so our energy costs were up $2,000 on that. I guess we could consider that if we get our furnaces are up and running now, maybe we could.
Those are fairly new, why would they not?
It was a fuel. It was, I don't know, there was water in the tank or something, and it plugged them up, and they didn't run most of last winter. We were busy, we just didn't get them fixed, I guess, so.
Are they fixed, or do you have them fix them?
They're fixed now. Well, I guess Brian was gonna get the tanks cleaned out, and that was a big issue with those. So basically, it's just the machinery and the salt this
So-
year. Our narrative that I put on top is that I'm just requesting that the Public Works Committee and the council consider possibly a part-time permanent worker for Public Works. We had budgeted some time for stormwater for extra sweeping, and last year we did have a part-time worker help us plow winter, or snow all winter. So it's to the point where we could use someone maybe like for 30 hours a week, maybe that we can depend on, that's a quality guy that, just not a part-time, just a seasonal worker, that someone that, that we can depend on, that can run our equipment, that has a CDL.
The consideration there, well, one would be wages and how many hours, but anything over 1,200 hours, so anything, whatever that 50-some %, we have to pay retirement on. So more than likely this position, which next year will be 7%. And we obviously have to pay FICA. The question is anything 30 hours or above, you have to offer them health insurance. Doesn't mean they have to take it. So that's a consideration too, as you guys consider and as finance and council consider it, is whether you want to try to keep the position, at 24 hours a week or whatever on average would be for the health insurance. Because obviously if they choose to take the health insurance, you're paying 75% of it.
That's over how many hours, Devin?
30 hours or above, we have to offer it. Again, they don't have to take it, because if they get family coverage, it might be, pricey, but that does obviously add $20,000 or so to the cost.
Is that 30 hours have to be, like if one week they work 40 and the next week is it?
It's supposed to be scheduled. So, if you know over the course of the year that you're going to budget, whatever, 1,560 hours, which would be 30 hours times 52 weeks, then you would have to offer them the insurance.
Aren't you down a couple people?
Since I think one position technically, it's technically a parks position.
When Leroy transferred from the parks down to the sewer plant, that position never got filled.
Right.
But we struggle every winter. We struggle with getting our snowplow. Whether this person just does the walking paths, but or help. We had a part-time guy plow last winter for us.
Well, and because Mark was out, right? Part of the reason was that.
Well, he's going to be done in February.
Right. And we'll have that position we'll have filled by then. So this would be an addition.
You're not down any people full-time.
Not currently, other than the position we lost a few years ago.
Right, I think
Wouldn't
that was,
you be better off filling that if you could afford it?
That would be bold on my part. I thought this was bold. So yeah, absolutely, we need another person. Absolutely.
Whether the budget works out that way or not, I'm saying you've been down. Can we afford it now to replace that empty position?
30 times 50.
Part-time, you're just looking for winter help.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but even in the summer, we didn't have enough staff to sweep as much as I wanted to. We had proposed that we wanted to sweep one extra day. Well, with all our full-time guys, doing cement work and painting the crosswalks and things like that, we just never have enough, personnel. So with another personnel, whether this person runs a street sweeper or helps another full-time guy do cement work or help paint, it'd just be very helpful for us.
You'd be talking a difference between 27, 35,000, and a full-time position would be, total cost would probably be 70, 80,000. So it's a big,
Yeah.
and part of it is the wages and part of it's the health insurance.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that would be a
This would
consideration.
step, at least, a step in the right direction if they, if the council or public works committee would consider it.
Okay, so Devin, you didn't include that, though?
That is not included, no.
Okay.
No.
So right now-
And the other thing, just so you realize, and this will be applied to finance committee when you meet too, is that there's a 15% increase in the health insurance factored into any number you're going to see. That's higher than I think we're going to end up with, knock on wood. We hopefully will have a very good renewal this year. But I put it in to be conservative so that, we weren't putting in 5 and getting 20. We should know that by the time finance meets. But it's the health insurance, even at no increase, is not cheap, regardless.
Okay.
So in order to avoid insurance, we'd have to stay under the 30 hours.
You would have to stay under 1,560 hours for the year, which averages out to 30, and you'd have to schedule it. You don't want to play games with that because, especially with the new federal changes, and you've got to be pretty. You don't want to play games with that number and say, oh, we're going to keep it under 30 and then have it go over. And
Well, how can you dictate that if we have a blizzard and we got to get guys out?
then he would have to work less during the summer. I mean, you would have to make sure if you didn't want to do the health insurance for this employee, you'd have to set it at 1,500 hours, for example, and
when
just
it's
make
used,
sure.
it's used.
Yeah, if you use a lot during the winter, then during the summer, you're not going to be able to do as much street sweeping or whatever else they would be doing.
So it doesn't matter if those 1,500 hours are incurred in 6 months?
No.
It's just...
It's on an annual basis because we have a calendar year
Well, that gives you more
insurance and budget.
flexibility.
And we might get a year like we did 2 years ago where we didn't have a lot of snow, so then we could utilize them for tree trimming, helping us tree trim, and then if we didn't need them so much in the winter, then we definitely.
And the other thing is with a part-time position like that, if it only ends up being 1,300 hours, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You don't necessarily just want to, because you have 1,500 hours, bring them in, I don't want to say to do nothing, but just to fill the hours.
So if we were to move forward with this, if it did happen, we could say, hire a person saying that, you're going to range from 24 to 30 hours
Right. A week.
a
yeah.
week,
And then you would for sure stay below the,
So at least they have a knowledge of, what we expect of them, and
as far as the wage rate too, you'd be able to, with this part-time person, well, you could really without the union setting, now you can set the wage wherever you want, but this person would likely get paid less than your full-timers, so there would be, some savings there.
I don't know what would be, I know some of the towns that I've talked to have been in between $16 and $20.
Right.
Well, and you want certified CDL drivers
Correct.
and all that. Yeah.
It would be nice.
Yep.
Last year we had a person plow for us for $16 an hour, but
16?
that was a little on the low side.
And again, that was because Mark was out on leave, so that, we needed that extra body.
But that was a CDL driver?
Yep. I would think you'd want, I would just think if you do, it's better to have it and require it, and I think you would get people that would apply for it, even at part-time, 24 to 30 hours a week, because
I would have to feel it out.
if you get in a pinch and you have another driver get sick or go down or is out of town, you've got that driver available then.
So, Devin, are you looking for
Well,
from the committee, or?
Obviously, the next step would have to go to finance, and they'd have to see how it figures. But if you wanted to make a recommendation at some hour and some wage, I can then get those numbers into the budget, and then when it goes to the finance committee, then you guys, you can look at it there and say, well, we can afford this, or we can't, or do different options for you, too. I could do it at 24, I can do it at 28 hours a week, average.
Okay.
What wage do you want to start at?
Yeah, that's kind of up to Tom. I don't think you want to go full wage as you're paying the full-time employees, but
Just another consideration is, we have sweeping and money set aside in our stormwater budget.
Right.
I don't know if that would be.
right, that would not come out, depending on how you set it up, and that would be something that Tom would have to tell me how many hours that would come out of the storm sewer fund.
Okay.
Up to the amount that whatever's budgeted in there. So not all of this money would come out of Public Works, because a portion of it would go to the storm
Right
sewer
now,
fund.
it's, I think, what did it say? 10 weeks at 40 hours, 22 weeks at 24 hours.
So I don't know, Tom, what do you think what should we budget for a wage if they're gonna?
I guess you
18?
have to figure out the percentage and
18
whatever
18
you-
to 20, I think, I mean, our normal guys get 24, 25.
Yeah, they'll be close to 25 next year, I think, yeah.
So,
I mean, so the situation is you could say, budgeted at 20 and, so many hours a week, and we figure it from there, and then
Yeah.
if you open it up and the candidates aren't, you can budget at a certain amount, but then when you advertise it, you can say 18 to 20 depending on qualifications, and that gives you some leeway. If you got someone that isn't as qualified, then you don't have to pay them as much.
So let's start at 28 hours a week and see
28?
what that ends up being. And if
At
it's too
$20 an
much,
hour?
at 20.
Okay.
And if it's,
And I can throw that into the budget at the next step when it comes to
so
finance
it's gonna be
committee.
like, it's like 42,000, I think, just
28
wages.
hours.
Let me ask you a hypothetical. Couldn't you, if we hired it full-time, you could split his wage out of the storm and sewer and
Right now, you could. Right now, even their wages, and there's a little bit of their wages are covered by water and sewer and other funds, but it isn't much. But for this specific position, if you hired a full-time person, you could say that 20%, whatever the percentage is, would be directly for the storm sewer.
justifiable.
Right.
Okay, so let's see what those numbers turn out to be, and, I mean, if.
So 28 hours a week, $20 an hour, right?
I'll do it.
Okay.
I don't have a CDL.
I don't
Okay.
Kurt, do you hire people in your business? I mean, do you have a feel for the, a way?
CDL, I mean, I think you're at that 20. Especially because in this position, and I mean, granted, we can look at it and say, they're getting paid their hours or their wage, but I mean, it's not the most glamorous work in the world because it's at 2 a.m. It's not 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So to put somebody out in terrible conditions, I'm not saying all summer is terrible, but I mean, we bring a lot of staff on for winter only, and we're at that $20.
And you could, if it gets approved, you could advertise it, and if you could do you'll be into the budget year, but you could maybe that first year, then if you end up having to pay a little bit more, back off in the hours that first, you know what I mean? Back off so that you're still meeting your budget. If you have to go up to 21 or 22, then you would just back off in the number of hours.
Right.
If that's, and we, like you said, until you put it out there, you're not going to know
Right.
what the market bears.
Okay,
Just that there's people that are laid off in the winter too from construction jobs.
But you're not looking for seasonal only, are you?
Because they'd have to be available during the summer.
Then
Well,
that's-
the other thing is that we run into, and I only speak from our standpoint, is that those guys that are laid off on unemployment, they don't want to, because if they come to work, then they lose unemployment.
Oh, I see.
I mean, right or wrong, we always think the same thing. Well, here's all these guys that are laid off.
The other thing that we've had really good luck with, even with our seasonal guys, is that if you get the right person who retires maybe a little bit younger or is retired that wants a little bit of income, you might get lucky and get a person like
Mark.
that also.
Just so you're aware too, that we have to be careful now because the state implemented some new laws as far as separation time before you hire an employee
Yeah.
back. And the concerns were at the university level is where it was, but they've implemented new rules. There used to be a 61-day waiting period, but I think that's longer now, and there has to be, whether it's Mark or whoever, you can't just bring them back. You can, but there's a whole bunch of rules now that we have to follow, just so you're aware of that.
okay.
Okay.
So can we start with that as a framework?
Yep,
Bring
and what I'll do then is, I'll put in Tom's budget as you've recommended it with what you've told me tonight with the position, and we'll see where that ends up at, and
Okay,
so, yep.
sounds good. Thank you, Devin.
And then, Devin, the other thing about the parks and
Oh, the parks budget, Devin, we didn't have it ready for here, but I've gone through it. I think, we basically told the park board that everything is
Status
zero
quo.
increase.
Okay.
I don't see any need to increase anything. We reviewed it. Basically keep it the same as last year.
Okay, we'll send it to finance that way, and,
Yeah.
okay.
same with
And the municipal building, I think we were going to leave the
building,
same,
and recycling.
and recycling, we were going to leave the same, so there shouldn't be any increases there.
Okay. How about stormwater utility?
That's Neil.
I think the budget that you have is pretty much the same as last year. There are really two differences, one of which is included in there, and that is the debt service payment on the $200,000 of debt for the Buckeye Street sewer, and that was about $11,000. That is included in there under other expenditures. The other thing that would probably be included in there, just based upon the discussion about Buckeye Street, is we could probably, at the first council meeting of the month, there was a discussion about the Foth Engineering contract and estimated cost for Buckeye Street, and that total cost was in the range of, with engineering, $290,000, I believe.
Too much.
So one of the things that we would probably do, we discussed using, for that extra $90,000, we discussed using the storm sewer fund for that, and that is something that we probably could accommodate. I mean, the cash balance at the end of last year, I think, was about $185,000. We'll add to it a little bit this year, and I think some of it is that, some work that we had budgeted, it's not likely that's going to be, particularly a lot of the contractual work is not going to be done this year. So we are going to have a fairly healthy carryover fund balance. So I think it would probably do no harm, and that's a badly needed project, to include that in capital for this year. But beyond that, it's unless there's a decision made to enhance the street sweeping more than it has, because as it is right now, I don't know,
Not getting done very much.
we haven't done much to date. There's a lot of leaf pickup in fall where you may catch up a little bit, but I don't think we're going to use all of that either. So I think we are going to have a healthy carryover. And I think, that even further supports the use of that carryover for this capital project.
Why do you have a negative request on the storm sewer utility on the bottom right-hand corner, cash balance, end of the period? So 187, or is that a
What
credit?
page?
That's the very first page.
7,800.
7,800.
That's because there's no revenue added in.
Oh, so this is in,
If, on the budget side, we hadn't added in the revenue yet. So add in, based upon last year and this year, $300,000 of revenue, and that corrects itself pretty quickly.
is that just on mine, or what?
No.
You're the only one who questioned it. We all knew.
Oh,
But we would add in, and, revenues, I think last year were, I think it was, $292,000, and I think at the halfway point this year, we were right at 150. So we're right on target. I mean, it's a pretty consistent source of revenue that's going to generate roughly $300,000 a year.
so that certainly there's money in there for stormwater drain fixing from that storm, and like I
For the
alluded to.
difference that's not
And-
going to be covered under the storm, you mean?
No, just to get them done. The ones that were broke. I had raised the question at the last council meeting about
For the catch basins?
catch basin.
I think even in this year, Randy, you look at it, we have capital projects that were budgeted for $50,000, and some of that was for relining, but also in there, in the contractual services account, there was like $77,000 budgeted for a number of things, and some of those were rebuilding catch basins.
Okay.
So and we haven't used a lot of those, so between the two of those, at this moment, you probably have $100,000 available that could be, devoted to that work.
And we do have, some sewer televising projects bid out right now, and we want to get Wisconsin Street storm and sanitary sewers televised, along with Fifth Street, where we're having a lot of the flooding. I want to make sure that sewer line from Elm Street down to Lake Malibu is, get that televised, and then that bottom section closer to the Division Street, from there to that storm pond is clear. I know some of the, looks like there was some sediment in some of those pipes, so we're bidding that out. I think the bids come in next week or so.
Does the televising in Wisconsin Street go against this, or does it go against the Wisconsin Street project?
I would assume would go against this right now,
Oh,
because we,
okay.
you know, we had provided for, for televising. I think some of the upfront costs, I think in the discussion with that project, we said that we would take care of it.
Oh, I see, okay. That's good.
Okay. Questions from anyone? Neil, is there anything you need from us?
Unless, I mean, the one change from here, and I think, you know, if you're pretty well agreeable to include that $90,000, so we have the funding for the Buckeye Street in place then, that'll get us up to 290. If we don't spend it, it comes in less. You know, the money's still in a fund balance that's going to be restricted for storm sewer. That's probably the biggest change.
Why don't we just go halvesies? Charge us half.
So you want a motion?
No, I don't think so. I think just direction from the committee when we move
What
forward.
did you want to pay for?
Wow, I was trying to decrease her half.
Oh, increase by half?
Decrease.
Oh, I thought I heard increase.
Recommendation, he just said a
Sure.
recommendation, that's fine.
So you're looking for a motion and recommendation?
Sure.
This goes back to finance the way it is. All right. Do we have a motion?
I don't know what we're motioning. You want the 90,000
I would think to include the 90,000.
for the Buckeye Engineering?
This would be for Buckeye Engineering and Construction, because I think the high side of Karen's estimate was $250,000, and we only had 200 that we borrowed for, so there's 50 there, plus Karen's engineering gets us up to 290.
Okay.
And so 200's coming out of the capital fund that we just, that we're borrowing money for, so we need to find a source for the other 90.
And you want that to come from?
Stormwater.
I'll make a motion that we include that 90,000 as part of the stormwater budget.
I'll second that.
Any other questions? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
And that motion carries. A couple tree items, and then hopefully we're close to finishing.
Okay.
Item number 13, review and consider recommendation of proposed tree ordinance.
Thought we had a ordinance on this.
It should all be on there.
No, I thought we had one.
Established already.
Oh, we came to Public Works and then it came back to the tree board because, to soften the language.
We brought it to the Public Works Department a while ago, and that was one of the comments seemed a little restrictive, and that we should just the Urban Forestry Board should revisit it. And so we have worked on it. John, I was hoping would be here tonight, or Ken Holman, but I'll try the best I can on it.
John let me know last night he wasn't going to be
okay.
here, so.
Currently, the first issue, or part of the issue sheet, is the current tree ordinance. It's chapter 229. It says trees. Basically, the whole ordinance is talks about Dutch elm, and that's pretty restrictive just to elm trees. So once the urban forestry board started, we just felt that there was a need to improve on that and get some improved tree ordinance. And I think that we presented it about less than a year, maybe a year ago or less, but we did some of the modifications that I think were requested. I think it's on page 4 of the new ordinance, or at least the draft form of what urban forestry is presenting.
What number? 229 dash what?
I'm trying to see what this here looks like.
It would be underneath proposed urban forestry ordinance. Page, I think it's the last page.
Planting of trees?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that was the stumbling part last time, and I just want to just clarify the importance of having a permit, that we could have, people would come in and obtain a permit free of charge, but that permit would help us maintain our tree inventory. It would give the people a chance to see what trees are that we feel that are suitable for that planting site. And it's just important. Then it would also have in that permit, that's probably what we're going to be talking about a little bit later, it has distances from intersections and utility lines and fire hydrants and things like that. So I think that was the biggest stumbling block at the last meeting, was it was too restrictive. And I think that we softened the language, and there's no fines or anything. We just want to have a little bit of control and let people know that we have some.
Encouraging the planet, yeah.
Yeah, we want to work with we just feel that the trees and urban forestry is very, very important part of our urban forestry and our infrastructure, and that it's just nice to have the variety, the size of the trees planted, the location of the trees planted, so we can keep a current inventory on these trees.
And this is only for trees planted in the right-of-way?
Public right-of-way. That's what the permit reads. It's a public right-of-way tree permit application. There's no charge.
So I think we probably need like a motion for the ordinances
to be
revising to include this.
We'd have to. It has to go back to council.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah, if it's okay with the Public Works Committee. Basically, I think we kept everything the same as last time. We just kind of worked out that area around the tree planting portion of it and the permit.
Well, I think the changes that have been made are good. I think it's a good policy. It is important, especially if people are planting in the public right of way, that we have some plan and people know how they need to be planted. And, I think it's nice that we have the resource available for people, as far as guidance and suggestions for types of trees. If you're boring like me, all I think of is a maple. So.
Well, that's the problem is I don't know, we can't tell people exactly what to plant, but we do have a list of recommended trees for this area, the zone and area that do well in boulevards. And the other thing is that we really don't want to encourage people to plant an elm tree underneath a power line. It's going to be in short order, it's going to be chopped off, and it's going to be, hazardous to the power lines and things like that.
So I'll make a motion that we recommend this ordinance to full council.
Second.
Any other discussion or questions? All in favor, vote aye.
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 Motion carries. Down to 14? Or is that all?
Well, basically, we already talked a little bit about this. This is the application that we're proposing. You have the applicant name, location of tree, type of tree, a little diagram of location, and a signature. Once we get the permit, we'll have someone visit the site and okay it. It gives some planting guidelines. It talks about distances from fire hydrants, gas lines, street lights, edge of the roads, distance from intersections, stop signs, overhead wires, and other trees that were planted before, property lines and things like that. So we have the permit, and then also we have a list of recommended trees that people can use as a guideline. Like Chairman Bernard said that she likes maple trees, while our inventory indicated that.
So does everybody else?
Of the trees that we have inventoried in our parks and on public streets, that we have 25% ash and 25% maples. I think the recommended percentage of one variety is like 10% or less. So we're way over on, I mean, 50% of our trees are of,
But I think if you inventoried Wisconsin, you would find out that maples
yeah.
are disproportionate. I mean, that's just.
Yeah. But it's something to consider. I think, one of the things that we talk a lot about on the Urban Forestry Board is tree diversity. So there's a lot of great trees on here, and we certainly can encourage people to, have them look at other varieties also.
This is just a great resource for people when they're planting in the boulevard or on their own property. So I would hope something like this would be on our website, and that we might even get something into the paper that we've established this new guideline and encourage people to give it some thought,
Yeah, the work
especially with
that-
all the trees that have gone down.
The work that was put into it for shape, fall, color, it's very valuable.
And a lot of the ordinance talks about, when you're planting trees close by, it talks about the crown, half the distance of the mature trees, crown is what we want to go for. So it's a lot of really good information.
Great. Thanks for that. Project update.
Do I need a motion on any of those permits and guidelines?
I mean, I guess I thought the whole thing was going to go
As one.
So,
Okay. That's fine.
Project
Any updates?
Project update, okay, very similar to last night's council meeting, but the 2013 street improvement project, the concrete work and manhole adjustments has been done on Hanley Road, and the work has moved to the Gateway area. The Lake Malibu storm sewer project, the trees have been planted out on that site. Red Cedar Canyon, we had the 3 cul-de-sacs, and the base and surface course pavement has been placed. We are working on the 3rd road up to the north. There was a private road, and now Hans Hagen Homes has come in, and Denny has presented that it's going to be a public road, North Court. We're doing the design of that, and they still want to try to get that construction done this year. And Stage Line Road roundabout, the concrete work is done. The bituminous base and binder's been placed. As representing the city, we have concern with that roadway. Both did not design it, was another engineering firm. We were doing some spot checking, and we have some concerns, so we're trying.
Again,
BKBM,
no, which road?
Stage Line Road roundabout. We have some concerns with that, and we're working with them to work out the issues before we allow them to put down the wear course and open up the road.
Easily fixable or fairly decent concerns?
Fairly decent concerns. I think that's a good point, and Tom was out on the site too. So we want to make sure it meets the standards of the city.
Were they not aware of the standards in the city, or did they choose to get creative?
Now, I think there's a combination of issues that happen between construction and design and placement. And so there's some slopes that are steeper than what we want, and we're trying to fix those slopes.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Can I ask one question on progress? What about between First and Second on Locust, and then that back alley that was...
That's another thing that that was more of a water main.
They're doing something now.
Yeah.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
I was approached by, Zappa Construction that they were going to put a water main in. I assumed that was probably a water project. He also indicated to me that one of the businesses wanted to put a storm pipe in the alley when they had the alley opened up for the water main. I've asked, them several times, this is the main street down here, we have to get it repaired. I think it was actually opened up prior to the 4th of July.
Well, it was opened up prior to the storm, wasn't it?
It's been open for a long time.
So I
thought
guess,
there was
if this
pretty
is
good
a water
washout from
project, they, the water department should, I asked him to check on the contractor. I assumed that it was more of a water project. I did talk with Gary because he indicated we have some questions on the stormwater part of it, but I know they're working on they put in the storm line the last few days. So I would assume that once that's in, that they'll move forward with curb and gutter and get it back out. I know there was a request, a while ago to redo the other, the mill and overlay the other half, but that wasn't included on the 2013 project, so we'll just do the half that they have opened up. The only other thing, I talked with the crack filler and street maintenance contractor today. They said that they have the contracts and things worked out with the city attorney, and they hope to be starting around October 1st. We're doing the crack filling.
Okay. Any items for future agendas? Next meeting? There's 5 Tuesdays in October. I know we've been trying to avoid the day after our second council meeting, but 29th feels like a long time away. Can we shoot for the 15th of October?
That works.
Evening, 5:30? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ooh, that's long. Long meeting.